Ever get that itch? You know, the one where you just want to dig through an attic? Or maybe get lost in a flea market.
Oh, yeah.
There's just something about uncovering hidden treasures, right? That thrill of finding something special, something with a story to tell. It's almost addictive. And no one embodied that spirit quite like Frank Fritz.
It's true. And his recent passing at the age of 58, it's left a real void in the world of picking. But you're right, his passion for it was real.
Yeah.
You could see it.
Yeah.
That love for the hunt, that was evident long before American Pickers ever hit our screens.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. For those who missed the show, American Pickers was more than just guys rummaging through barns, right?
Oh, for sure.
This was Frank and his childhood buddy, Mike Wolfe, taking us on these cross-country road trips, picking through Americana. And honestly, their chemistry was pure gold.
Oh, their dynamic was a huge part of the show's success, for sure. You had Mike, the fast-talking, deal-making whirlwind. And then you had Frank with his down-to-earth charm. And that eye for the unusual. It was like watching a classic buddy comedy unfold, but with vintage finds as the backdrop.
And speaking of unusual, did you know Frank's collecting obsession started back in 8th grade?
No way.
This wasn't some made-for-TV hobby. This man had a passion that ran deep.
Absolutely. The article you shared mentioned his early collections. You're not going to believe this. Beer cans, stamps.
And get this, razor blades.
Razor blades. Okay, now I'm picturing a museum display. Antique razor blades of the Midwest. But seriously, that speaks to something about Frank, don't you think? It wasn't about finding something valuable. It was that he saw the story in the everyday object. Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about him. It wasn't ever about the money for Frank. He appreciated the history, the craftsmanship, even the quirkiness of what he found. Remember, this is a guy who amassed a collection of over 100 motorcycles.
Over 100. That's not a collection that's practically a motorcycle museum unto itself. But you hit on something really important. The stories. It's like each item he found held a piece of the past, a connection to a different time.
And he had this knack for bringing those stories to life. Think about how Frank interacted with people on the show. It wasn't just about the deal. He was genuinely interested in their connection to the objects, the history they held.
You're right. He had this way of making you feel like you were part of the discovery, even if you were just watching from your living room. But it wasn't all sunshine and barn finds.
Right. The article mentions his departure from the show back in 2020. Yeah, and it's a complex situation. The article cites health challenges, which we know included Crohn's disease. And then there's the falling out with Mike Frank himself, mentioned in a 2022 interview that he felt unsupported during his struggles.
That's heartbreaking, especially considering they reconciled a year later. It makes you think about the pressures of fame, the demands of television production, and how those things might have impacted their relationship.
Yeah, it really makes you think about everything that goes on behind the scenes. Because even the most successful partnerships, they run into bumps in the road.
Yeah, and with Frank, those health challenges were nothing to scoff at.
No, not at all. Crohn's disease is a serious chronic condition.
Yeah.
And to have a stroke on top of that?
It's a lot.
It is. And it definitely makes his absence from the show hit even harder.
It does. And, you know, you can't really gloss over the timing of it all. This was 2020. Oh, wow.
Right at the start of the pandemic.
Right.
When the world felt like it was turned upside down, you know, everyone was dealing with isolation.
Yeah.
Uncertainty to some degree.
So true. It was a time of immense change and upheaval, both globally and personally. And in the midst of that, you had Frank and Mike navigating their own personal and professional challenges.
Exactly. It's easy to forget that these public figures, they're real people, right? Dealing with real-life stuff behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And while we can't know the full extent of their reconciliation, it's clear that both men, they valued that friendship, their shared history.
It's bittersweet, you know?
Yeah.
Knowing they found their way back to each other, but Frank never made it back to the show. By then, Mike's brother, Robbie, had stepped in to fill that void.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize how unpredictable life can be, how sometimes events unfold in ways we can't anticipate or control.
Absolutely. But even though his time on American Pickers came to an end, Frank's impact on the world of picking, on those of us who love a good treasure hunt, that's something that'll stick around.
It will. He reminded us that history, you don't just find it in museums and textbooks, you know. It's in the objects we touch, the stories they hold, the connections we forge through those shared passions.
And he did it all with this contagious enthusiasm, this real love for the hunt that was just impossible to fake. You couldn't watch American Pickers and not get swept up in his excitement.
No, you couldn't. He had this way of finding the extraordinary and the seemingly mundane, you know, a rusty old sign, a vintage lunchbox. In Frank's hands, they became more than just objects. They were portals to the past.
And he had this way about him, connecting with people, drawing out their stories, making them feel like they were part of it all. It was like he saw the value in everyone and everything.
And that's a powerful legacy to leave behind. He reminded us to embrace our curiosity, to find joy in the hunt, and to appreciate those stories that connect us all.
It's funny how we use the term deep dive for the show.
Right.
But with Frank, it takes on a whole other meaning.
I get you. He wasn't exactly hunkering over spreadsheets and academic journals, was he?
Right.
His deep dive was straight into the heart of America, to those forgotten places where history literally piles up.
And the article mentioned this. He seemed to really connect with the people who weren't in it for the money, the ones who kept things because of the memories attached.
Yeah. There's something really genuine about that, don't you think?
Yeah.
This idea that an object's value can be deeply personal, tied to a story that you can't put a price tag on.
Exactly. And that's what set American Pickers apart from all those other reality shows. This is a celebration of that connection we have to the past, the love for a bygone era, and the thrill of finding something truly unique.
It's true. In a world that's always chasing the next new thing, Frank reminded us to slow down, to look at things a little closer, appreciate the craftsmanship of a vintage toy, or the beauty in an old faded sign.
Yeah, he was a reminder that history isn't just something you read in a textbook.
Right.
It's the feel of a worn-out baseball glove. It's the whispers of stories from a box of old postcards. He had this gift for making the past feel real, like it was just within reach, connecting us to the people who were here before through the things they left behind. And he did it all with that humor, that genuine charm.
Yeah, and never lost sight of the fun, the joy of the hunt. And honestly, I think that's a beautiful legacy to leave behind.
It really is. Frank Fritz taught us to be a little more curious, to find the wonder in everyday things, and to never stop searching for those hidden treasures.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. To Frank's family and friends, our deepest condolences. And to Frank, thanks for the adventures, the laughs, and the reminder that sometimes the best things in life are found in the most unexpected places.